Call the meeting to order. All rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call. All members are present. One note, Council Member Wilbur will be leaving at about 7 or in that approximate for the council's notice. Approval of the agenda. We've got some changes. 7A, approved resolution 2022-65 along with the 2022-62, approving the interfund loan. 7H, approved resolution 2022-66 authorizing quotes on the AD building. Also, we were going to rearrange move the action items A, B, and possibly C up to right after the public hearing due to time. Is there any other changes to the agenda by the council? Okay. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda with those changes?
Motion to approve.
Motion by Diane, second by Heidi. Call the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 5 in favor, none against. Approval of the minutes of the July 6, 2022 regular meeting. You all received them in your packet. Is there any changes, corrections, or clarification needed? Hearing nothing, do I have a motion to approve the July 6, 2022 regular meeting minutes?
Make a motion to approve.
Motion by Shellen. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Joe. Call the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 5 in favor, none against. This brings us to our public open forum. All comments are limited to 3 minutes. Is there anyone that would like to speak to the council? Approach the podium and state your name and address.
My name is Diane Haskamp. I live at 110 South 8th Street here in Sauk Center. I'm here before the City Council to see what can be done about the corner of 8th Street and Ash, 731 Zach Callahan and 727 Brandy Lottie. Both of them live on Ash. This corner looks like a dump. I have been to City Hall multiple times to talk to Sarah, and she has told me that there is nothing she can do. There are trash cans that sit on the boulevard and are never removed from there. There's trash in their bins even right after it's been picked up. There's been a couch that's sat on the boulevard for the last 3 weeks, and there's always junk in the front yards and between the houses, and it looks like an eyesore. My property sits right behind both of these houses of their backyards, and they hardly ever mow them. The fence between the fence and Brandy Lottie's backyard has been mowed only twice this year. Zach and Brandy, along with all of their friends, party often in Zach's backyard as late as 4:30 in the morning. Loud music, revving of the demo cars. They've burned a tire in the fire pit. When we've called the police, they're told to turn the music down, which lasts for only about 10 minutes after the police leave, and it's right back up. Zach often parks his vehicles on the streets going the wrong direction with no citations from the police when they go by there often. They toss wood over the fences. They don't pick it up or stack it so that it's scattered all over the place. They have 2 rows of pallets stacked all the way up to the soffit between their house and garage. We have had to install cameras on our house due to a 4x4 post swing set being pulled from the ground and my rhubarb being pulled and scattered all over. When I called the police and he came, he said, well, it was maybe the wind that did it, and we can't prove that they did. So we have installed cameras on our house to protect it and to prove that they have done these things. These two properties bring down my property value and others that live around these houses. If I wanted to sell my house right now, I don't think anybody would be interested after seeing what they would have to look at from my house. It doesn't look very good when someone comes to town and drives down Ash Street to look at our schools, churches, or drive to Walmart, and this is what they see. Rick has lived in Sauk Center almost his entire life. We borrowed our home in 1980, and it was a very nice neighborhood, but that has really changed since Zach and Brandy have bought the 2 houses on Ash. The city council is concerned about bringing new people and businesses to our community, but how about taking care of the people who already live here? If there are no ordinances to take care of these kind of problems, then I think it's time to be putting some in place so that no neighbor has to look or live with something like this next to them. I could go on, but I've been told that 3 minutes is all the time that I have. So I thank the city council for at least listening to me.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to speak to the council? Is there anyone else that would like to speak to the council? Our public open forum is now closed. We'll recess the regular council meeting, enter into our public hearing. We have one public hearing before us this evening regarding the tax increment financing District 1-16. It is our intention that everyone has the opportunity to be heard. If you wish to speak, please sign in on the sign-up sheet at the back of the room. The procedure is as follows. Presentation by staff, followed by questions of staff, then public input. Raise your hand. When recognized by the mayor, approach the podium and state your name and address for the record. State your comments and position. No one will be allowed to speak a second time until everyone has had a chance to be heard. First, we will hear questions for clarification. Then second, favor of the proposal. Third, public speaking against the proposal. After everyone who wishes to speak has had the opportunity to be heard, the hearing will be closed. After closure of the public hearing, the council will deliberate and take action as appropriate. Members of the audience do not participate in the council's decision or discussion until a majority of the council concedes to hear additional information or questions. The hearing is now in session.
Mayor, City Council, Tammy Umdahl with Northland Securities, serving as advisor to the city. Mayor, City Council, you had in your packet and for the public the tax increment financing plan related to this proposed district. The city received a request for the establishment of a new tax increment financing district to assist with the construction and financing of a housing project, which I will describe in a moment. Tax increment financing for the viewing public and for the council is a tool under Minnesota law that allows the city to capture for a defined period of time the local property taxes, the city, county, school, and others. For commercial property, which is not the subject of this particular district, the state property tax cannot be captured, and for any type of tax increment financing district, the school referendum taxes or any referendum taxes cannot be captured. So the request that the city received from the applicant, and tonight for the council and for the public, you are considering the tax increment financing plan only. There is no item before you with respect to entering into an agreement with the applicant for this project. The proposed project includes 41 owner-occupied housing units. In the tax increment financing plan, we assumed certain dates for phasing of those units to be constructed. That's for the purposes of the plan. The plan establishes a budget, which is a not-to-exceed amount, which I'm going to highlight in a moment. But I want to note that because we don't know exactly when those units will start. The city does not have a proposed agreement yet with the developer that would define those commencement and completion dates for different phases or number of units by a certain date. So this represents a starting point, a plan, a not-to-exceed. With respect to the plan and the budget, the total amount of increment given those 41 housing units and an assumption for taxable market value per unit, the total tax increment over the maximum life of this district, 26 years, you may determine to enter into a shorter term agreement with the developer, but the plan provides for up to 26 years of capturing of those local taxes for a total future value of about $7.1 million. There are a lot of assumptions that go into that estimate of tax increment, including that the tax rate, the current pay 22 tax rate would continue at that level. If the tax rate goes up, you don't capture additional increment, but if the combined tax rates go down, there's less increment generated, among many other factors that impact that final tax increment. But as estimated, and the budget provides for 7.1. The plan also provides for 3.2 million, up to approximately 3.2 million of reimbursement of site improvement costs. You may not ultimately agree to provide that level of assistance for site improvement, but given the assumptions in the plan, it provides for up to that. In addition, approximately 300,000 for reimbursement of utility improvement costs is included in the budget. There are also dollars provided for administration that are included. The amount for administration, I would note, is the $356,000. This is over 26 years. It's unlikely the city would need all of that for admin. In that case, those would be excess dollars that would be returned for redistribution to the taxing jurisdictions, or the city can redirect those admin dollars to assist other affordable housing projects. In order to qualify for this type of district, I've been using that term affordable housing, the developer will need to agree by contract, which is not before you tonight, that they will income qualify, these are owner-occupied units, the first buyer of those units. It's different than multifamily affordable housing tax increment financing districts where it's the life of the district that there has to be income qualification. For owner-occupied, it is one time, at the time of the initial sale of that property. My understanding is that the developer is aware of that and believes that this project would meet that requirement. 95% of the units would have to be income qualified. So these are a little bit more tricky, the owner-occupied, just because it's a high percent. 95 would have to be income qualified. With that, Mayor and Council, you have before you two resolutions. You have the resolution that would establish this tax increment financing district and the adoption of the plan, and you have an interfund loan resolution. My understanding from staff is that negotiations are still ongoing with the developer. I would note for the council that it is your decision. You could close the public hearing and not act on this resolution tonight and postpone that until the meeting that you are also asked to consider entering into the development agreement with the developer. That is not a concern with respect to the process for establishing the TIP district in any way. If for some reason in the course of discussions with the developer that the assumptions change, and again, we tried to make the assumptions broad that provided for the most opportunity for the plan to have that not to exceed amount. But if something were to change of a material amount that would cause that budget to have to change, you would have to start the process over. And the process over was there was notification provided to the county and school, the county commissioner, all the steps that go through that. So I would note that to you. And Mayor, last comment I have before I turn it back to you. I did receive a call from the superintendent of the schools today. He had some questions for me, and he wanted me to note that I answered those questions. The school did not have any specific comments. I did not receive anything from the county, and they didn't need to provide anything. They just needed proper notice. Mayor.
Okay. Anyone have any questions on what she said? Basically, all this numbers on this plan is what we have to start with.
Yes,
basically.
they are not to exceed numbers. You can do less than that. You just can't do more than what is in this plan. And if you have it before you, you don't need to turn there, but as you're reviewing it maybe later, specifically in figure 3.1 on page, I put my glasses on page 9.
Okay.
I know we're not discussing exact numbers tonight or length of time, but you had repeatedly said 26 years. I think we were under the assumption originally 25, so I'm not sure if that was an oversight, but that was the request that we had heard.
Mayor, council member, I can explain.
Sure.
It's confusing. It's 25 years after the first year of increment.
That's what I was
So a
assuming.
total of 26 years.
Okay.
Oftentimes applicants don't understand that either when they're making their request, but that is the maximum. In negotiation, you can always do less than that when you enter into a contract to provide that assistance. You just can't exceed that 26-year term.
The biggest questions I have on this is just, in relationship to the affordable housing versus, whether it be income-based, are those two can be used interchangeably, or how does that factor into the?
So it is income-based. So in order for the city to have a qualified TIF housing district, you have to receive from the developer, whoever enters into the contract, certification that they in fact did income qualify those buyers. The city doesn't do that. You don't have to collect documentation. They sign their name to say that, yes, we income certified this number of units by this date. The reason it's important that they do that is because under terms of a contract, ultimately, you may be writing a check to them twice a year to reimburse them from the increment. If it's determined under a state audit from the state auditor's office that you did not maintain record of income qualification, they don't ask the developer to pay that back. They require that the city pay that money back, and then you're left trying to recoup that from the developer. That's why you always make sure you have that income certification from the developer, whoever's in the contract with you, before you write them a check. So it falls upon them to meet those requirements.
And is that an income qualification based on state or based on county?
State references IRS code. It's based upon family size. It adjusts, so it's, and I did bring that information. It starts at 100 and it can go up higher depending on family size. So let me. It's for the county and. So this, and it changes every year. So the current one would be 88,500. And it's income. It's not assets. It's income that they need to income qualify the first buyer.
And that's 88,000 for two or one?
The 88,000 is for the median family.
And that's a number of, and I assume it goes up after that, but just a base of 88,000.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Okay. Any other questions?
You mentioned the 95% need to be income qualified for the district. If they don't comply with that, then if they end up at 90%, what happens? The district just ceases? We don't pay them their increment?
That is correct. And it would be, going back to my process point, that it's the city that needs to make sure you're getting that certification before you make any payments, because that way you know when you're making a payment every 6 months that they did in fact meet those requirements. The development agreement will specify how many units, phased in, in the plan, and I won't open it. For example, we made some assumptions on when those phases would occur, and we tried to do it in a way that provided the maximum amount of TIF revenue to provide you opportunity to have those negotiations with the developer. The developer might say, we can't meet that fast. We want you to agree to having this number built over and making this up 10 years instead of what was assumed in the plan. And that's fine. It's just that will result in less increment than what was projected.
And does the increment, does the 95% apply for the number of units that are currently developed and sold at the time for each year that the tax would be paid back?
It'll be subject to the agreement, but over the life of the district, you have to, 95% of all the units in the TIF district have to be income qualified. So it works such that there could be, the first year maybe he says one that he doesn't have income qualified. The challenge is the more you give away those non-income qualified sooner, then the balance of them all have to be income qualified. So that's why this agreement, that ultimately if you get to that point, will be a little bit more technical than certainly your other TIF agreements for the very questions that you're asking me.
Just to kind of I'm sorry I keep going back to this, but so you had said that it doesn't incorporate assets into the discussion of what the income would be.
Correct.
Okay, so I guess just maybe getting at the nuts and bolts of what the idea is behind TIF. when it relates to housing, I would assume, and maybe this is a wrong assumption on my part, that it's to help people get homes who may not be able to afford them. Correct? Is that?
You are correct.
Okay, so I'll leave that alone. Thank you.
Any other questions, comments? The one thing I did notice, there's a 4-year on length of term. So say we enter into, looking into the plan, and we don't get anything, agreement in place, or the developer hasn't done anything in a 4-year time frame, this all goes away? Is that the way I read that?
Mayor, good question. It doesn't go away. So let's just, for sake of this discussion, let's just say this gets approved and the developer plats the parcels. So there's 41 separate parcels. A parcel, something needs to happen either on that parcel or adjacent to it. So for example, if it was platted and all the streets were put in and utilities, that's a qualifying activity. So it would meet that 4-year requirement. But if it was done, and I'm making this up, in phases where it was an outlot and didn't have anything done, that parcel doesn't get removed after 4 years. It gets, a casual term, knocked down by the county. And when something happens then, either adjacent or on that parcel, the county puts it back in for tax purposes in the district, but it comes back in at what the land is valued at that tax year versus what it is currently when you're establishing this district. So it makes no difference if the land value doesn't go up. If the land value went up significantly, it would mean less increment because that base would be higher. There's also a 5-year rule that applies. So basically, something needs to get going at some point, and that's why those rules are in place. So these TIF districts and parcels aren't forever hung up in these tax increment districts.
Okay. Any questions or discussion? Then I will move on with the rest of the public hearing and see if there's anyone in the public that would want to speak, have clarification, speak in favor or against the proposal. Is there anyone here that needs clarification, would like to speak in favor or against the proposal? Call a third time. Is there anyone here that needs clarification or wants to speak in favor or against the proposal? Okay. I know we did receive an email from the developer that he asked us to read in.
He just asked me to provide it earlier. He said it doesn't.
Oh, it doesn't need to be read in? Okay. I think each one of us received that. Okay. If there's no other questions on this, then I think we've reached the end of our public hearing. And then we will go into action items next. So the public hearing is adjourned. We are now back into regular session of the council. So we will go down to 7A, approve resolution 2022-62 approving TIF District 1 through 16, and approve resolution 2022-65 approving the interfund loan.
I think Tammy explained that all quite well, what we're trying to do with these two resolutions. And she did give you also the option of not taking action on that and tabling it until which time we have a developer agreement in front of us as well. And so you have actually the 3 options. You have to approve it as presented. You could table that until we have a development agreement in front of us, or you could, of course, deny it. That's your 3rd option.
Okay. If we would table it, is there any other costs that we're going to be incurring during that time frame
No,
other than,
nope, it's just going to lay on the table till we bring it back. Costs going forward now would be in negotiating the developer agreement itself.
okay.
So,
Any other questions, concerns?
I guess I kind of alluded to it. And my biggest concern is just with the income versus disposable income or assets, and how that applies to the TIF laws for housing. So I've got mixed feelings about how it would potentially be applied in this situation.
Okay. One thing is we do have to understand we're acting on the plan. We're not closing the door on anything happening up there by acting on, if we pass it, the only way we're gonna close the door is if we deny it. Because we got a lot of negotiations to do with the developer and everything before we even get to the point. This is just some base numbers or the max numbers, like she said, to go through. We've got money invested in it already to not see what he comes to the table with and let him, and then we can decide. If everyone understands kind of where I'm going with.
Yeah, so we're not, the whole idea is, saying yes or no, let's move forward with this tonight, but the negotiation part, which is where my questions even more came up tonight, more than what we discussed at EDA level, but I'd be okay. I'm not making a motion right now, but I understand what you're saying.
I'm basically just don't want to, get thrown under the bus because we didn't attempt to keep the negotiations open, but yet we don't have a developer's agreement. We don't have anything else in front of us to go by. So I'm leaning more toward just tabling it until he gets everything in order and goes. And as long as we're not incurring any money, more money, because I don't want to use taxpayer dollars for something that.
Right.
This would allow us, I think, time to also discuss more the negotiation aspect and maybe,
Right.
put it all together, as Tammy had said.
And I know the EDA's been working on this for a while, and there's a lot of things that, probably need to be brought out at council level more, but I'd be leaning toward the tabling, but that's up to you guys.
I agree too.
Yeah.
I would rather have it tabled until we get an agreement, a signed agreement from the developer.
Right.
I want to see that first.
I think the negotiation piece will help pull those two things together.
It's hard to negotiate when we don't have anything in front of us to
Right.
look at,
Correct.
to make an agreement. And we are not in the position to make promises on blue sky, to be blunt.
I'll make that motion then, chief.
Make an agreement on blue
Yes.
sky? Oh,
Yeah.
no.
No, not that one.
Well, I just said it and you repeated
No,
it, so I was just,
You were saying before about the developer,
okay, so you're making a motion to
have the developer agreement first.
To table
and
the,
table
Table
this?
it, yes.
Okay. Does everybody understand the motion? We're going to table both of them, both resolutions, until we get a developer agreement and negotiations have proceeded.
Right.
Okay. That was from Diane. Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Second by Shallon. Any other discussion? Call the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 5 in favor, none against. 7B, approve resolution 2022-63 awarding the bond sale 2022A. That would
George
be,
Iverson, also from Northland Securities here, and you have a document bond sale summary in front of you. I think that's what you're going to go over with them.
Yes, Council, this document, bond sale summary, should be on the table. Good evening, Mayor, members of the council. When I was here last, May 4th, you considered and approved a resolution calling for a bond sale. This is to finance the 2022 street and utility project. As you, I believe, are aware, the PUC is financing their share internally through cash reserves, and the city is financing the storm and the street components of the project. So the financing itself is a 15-year term. It is the payback of the bonds is with a combination of two sources. One is special assessments to benefited property owners. So about 1.65 million will be assessed to benefiting property owners. That's approximately 36% of the project. The balance would be spread on all taxable property through your levy. So council, I will mention a little bit, noting, I guess, on page 2 of that summary, again, the working with Standard & Poor's, your city administrator and I had a rating call. Following that call and a review by the rating agency, they affirmed the city's AA- bond rating. Very strong rating. Certainly applaud the city for that. I'll note several key points that were noted in the rating report. One is the stable economy within the city with steady tax-based growth. Certainly that's been noticed by Standard & Poor's. Number 2, very strong reserves. So you've got very good, as a percentage, general fund reserves. And then 3, strong management with good financial policies and practices. So those were 3 positive credit factor items that were certainly noted strongly in the rating report. So as we've talked about many times, the better the credit rating, the more favorable that you can certainly get into the bond market. So this was a really favorable week for selling bonds. I looked back at May 4th when I was here last, compared to the bond sale results that we got today. And very, very similar. It was a 3.03 true interest cost when we were looking at May 4th's market. And in the current market, we're at a 3.06%. I'll just note, and I'm sorry to keep you flipping around here a little bit, Council, but on page 3, it says Exhibit A bid tab in your packet. This is the bidders that we received in bond bids from this morning. So at 10:30 this morning, bids were due. We received from 5 different investment banks. As you can see, it's certainly a global, or not a global, a national list of investment banks, with the Baker Group out of Oklahoma City providing the low bid. We based the award on the far right-hand column, which is the true interest cost, and that's where we see the 3.04%, followed by Robert W. Baird bids at 3.12%. So like I noted, we sold bonds this week for North Mankato, Thief River Falls, and now the City of Sauk Center, all similarly rated communities, and all selling 15-year debt. And so these were all right on top of each other, the sale results. So I think that it's a good market right now, even with rates moving up in the year 2022, locking into a 3% overall true interest cost is a nice result. So, Mayor, Council, the call date on these bonds, that's the date that you can refinance or prepay on the bonds, is February 1st of 2030 and any date thereafter. Why that's important is when you reach the call date, you'll still have $2.7 million of principal remaining on the bonds. So about 61% of your bonds are still remaining at that point. And what we'll do is certainly with this bond issue and with your current debt, we always keep an eye on the market. You know, is there ever an opportunity to refinance at a lower rate? So that's the call date. The closing date, that's the date that you receive the funds, August 18th. So that's the bond issue in a quick presentation. Council, I can certainly address any questions that you may have.
Questions? Concerns? I'm surprised the rate stayed as close to May
So
as
am
what
I.
it did. but-
So am I.
Well, what actually happened, Mayor and Council, is since May 4th, rates did move higher, and then we also saw just recently with more recession talk, actually, a week to 2 weeks ago, interest rates moved lower, and so they've kind of stabilized at this point. But that's where we've kind of come back to those early May levels, so.
Okay. Any questions of George?
Good
All right.
job.
Otherwise, we'll move on to action, approve the resolution 2022-63, awarding the sale of the 2022A bonds to the Baker Group.
I'll make the motion. That's too good of a deal to pass up.
Motion by Diane, do I have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Joe. Call the question, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries 5 in favor, none against.
Thank you.
Thank you. Do you want to do 7C or do we want to go to reports?
I think
Based
Shelley
on-
needs to leave.
Depends upon what you're thinking.
Well,
Couple minutes?
Yeah.
Depends upon how long
I
you
have
think.
no idea.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's do it.
So that's up to you. Otherwise, we can go to reports and presentations and get them out of the way. Because you probably got to go.
We can roll with C if you want to.
Okay. Then we'll do 7C, approve resolution 2022-60, granting exception from city code, Bergman. Yeah, for right now, we're going to 7C based on timeline here with Shallon.
I'll watch the reports later.
You got them all in your packet.
Okay, this is the exception, or the request for the exception to the city code for that driveway. It's a continuation of the discussion held on July 6th council meeting regarding the request to allow for a second driveway on property on Lakeshore Drive. I had included in your packet the staff report from last time, so I won't repeat that again, what they're trying to do, but I did reach out to them after the meeting, and I asked them the following questions. You know, what is the status of the phone and cable boxes? If you recall, they were kind of demolished. We didn't know if they were being removed. And with the boxes gone, they appear as if they're being removed, but his response was that they're a mess right now due to an auto accident that took place in December. The cable companies still have not repaired them despite numerous phone calls. This is the second accident in this location in the last 3 years. So the cable boxes are not going away. I asked, would you have the ability to back between the garage and the light pole? And what is the distance from the corner of the garage to the pole? Could you back between them to park onto your yard parallel to the street or the garage in the winter? And he said that accessing it from that area between the light pole and the garage is not possible. He's tried. There's only 2 or 3 inches of clearance on each side, which is not allowed to turn the vehicle and park parallel to the street or the garage. I asked if he could use the common approach on the north side of the driveway by the electrical box to back onto the property. He said they can't use it, which lies by the property line. He said they can't use it because there's not enough clearance for anything bigger than a lawnmower due to the transformer. If the city would move the transformer, then they would use that approach. And then I asked if the common approach was used by the neighbor, and the answer was no. So then he had stated that it would be certainly much easier if the city would approve an odd-even parking ordinance in the winter months like many other communities. Unfortunately, it sounds like a couple members of the council are against that. All we're proposing is to modify our small section of curb to be a surmountable curb like the northeast section of Lakeshore Drive. At least half of Lakeshore currently uses that type of curb. To recap and order preference, number 1, he'd like you to either modify the parking ordinance, 2, move the power transformer, or 3, allow a surmountable curb, which in this instance is to allow another driveway curb cut access. So we did have those 4 options that we had before. I think those still remain viable unless you want, can select something different, which was to grant that second curb cut to remove, and you could remove the existing one, the common one, in exchange for this one. You could just let them have another one. You could just allow it, the surmountable curb across the entire lot, which is what he had initially asked, or you could deny it. So you have quite a range of options that you could do, whether you want to allow it or not. There was some questions about impervious coverage on the lot, and if he were to put another driveway and another parking pad, he would still be within the impervious coverage requirements. He has quite a bit of area on the property. I know that was one of your concerns on there. There was another concern about precedent. If we allow it here, we're going to have to allow it everywhere, and that's something that you guys had discussed before. It's a little bit different here in that they have one they could get rid of in exchange. A little bit different than this, what's a little different on this than other people when we had talked earlier by having that no on-street parking in the winter. We might be seeing some applications for this type of use. However, it was our intent at that time, if somebody didn't have a driveway, that we would give them some consideration versus this is a second driveway for occasional use. It's a little bit different, but it still is a second driveway request. So some things to think about. We probably, should have a little bit more discussion if you have some more questions on this and get him an answer.
I have a question, Vicki. With these extra curb cuts or surmountable curb, he's going to pay for all that, isn't he? Or
Right, yes.
He doesn't expect the taxpayers to pay that too?
No, that would be at his expense.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Any other questions, concerns? My concern is this pure fact that, you know, we got our city codes in place. And every one of us sitting here was elected to represent the city as a whole. And if we make exceptions for every one person that comes walking in and change our ruling, then what are we here for? We might as well throw the city code book and everything
We're going to
in the garbage and be done with it, because then we're picking and choosing who we want to have special treatment. Sounds harsh, but I look at that's what I was put in office for.
Yeah.
Is to represent everybody, not pick and choose who gets something special.
I would also agree, after we discussed at the last meeting, but had more time to think about it, had this been a permanent structure that he needed, not for something that was being used, short-term recreation, you know, this could go away in a month and he will have built this for naught. So we're making special circumstances, you know, allowing something for an extra toy, if you want to put it that way. And I guess to bend a city ordinance in that respect or allow would,
I'm worried about setting a precedence with this. If we bend the ordinances for him, then we got to do it for everybody. And I'm not for that.
And while I still understand that argument, I feel like it was a problem that was created, where I'm at is it was a problem that was created by us. I mean,
No.
he doesn't want to,
That was not created by us, Shellen.
well, but the parking was something that we, so
Yes,
now he doesn't
but
have that option.
His problem is he bought a truck that's too long and it won't fit in his garage and it hangs out in the street. His problem is he bought a 28-foot trailer for 4 snowmobiles. That's not our problem. He bought that. He brought it on himself when he did all that.
I know I have neighbors across the street that they have, you know, 4 vehicles between them that do not have off-street parking. Same problem for them. They don't have an option. So if we're going to be even across the board with this, maybe we address it after this winter and see if we need to reevaluate. But for now, we kind of have to stick to our guns, I believe.
I agree.
I know it's really nice to make the decisions that please everybody, but we make people mow their lawns. That's
We
the city
do?
code,
Yeah, I know.
you know? That was we created that. Oh, now I have to mow my lawn because it's 6 inches long or 8 inches. We don't, so somebody that doesn't mow their lawn, we enforce it and say no. So.
Yeah.
That's kind of where I'm standing. If the code book is for one, it's for everybody.
Well,
Don't pick and choose.
isn't that why we do variances and stuff too? I mean, we're varying from our codes and our policies, which is kind of what he's asking. So I mean, we're using that as an argument. You're pretty much saying we should not allow any variance. I mean, it almost sounds like with that argument.
We do variances, but we also have denied people with 3-stall garages for wider driveways.
Well, I understand that, but again, so he's making a request to us, and we're having a discussion, not to say that, well, the city code says this, we're just going to deny it simply because the code says that, because, I mean, then we shouldn't do any variances if that's what the code says.
I
So,
agree
mean,
with that.
So I don't know that's an argument to the circumstances, use that as a basis strictly to deny this just because of that. Now, because we don't want to set precedents, things like that, okay, well, those are valid arguments to not do it. You know, a problem of his creation, Diane, you mentioned, you know, buying the truck that's too long, the trailer, I mean, those are things people buy, the circumstances that he had at the time he purchased them, he could park on the street, those type of things. Now, would we be in the situation if people would remove their cars off the street when it snows, like, you know, good common sense would tell you we should be doing? No, we probably wouldn't have passed this ordinance, but here we sit today with a situation that, again, is not of his creation, because we made the code you can't park on those streets. We wouldn't encourage him to violate those codes by just doing it and seeing what happens. So, I mean, I'm open to work with him. I look at those utility boxes, yeah, if the phone cable boxes could be moved to a different location on the site, and that power pole wasn't there, and he could just access his driveway and widen that pad there through his normal access, that'd be great, but I don't think we are sitting here to say what Charter or Arbig or whoever's boxes those are is supposed to do there.
I think the response that we got from him was not to even look at those options, because we discussed that 2 weeks ago, was move that cable box, which apparently he's tried to get rid of. The street light would be our issue, and if he's willing to have it removed, and we'd be willing to do it, then he has the access with the clearance necessary. But it sounds like he doesn't want that option. He's trying to knock that option down with his response, so he's not willing to work with us, and
I guess I
We
don't know
don't
that I
see an
got that
alternate.
impression that he was opposed to that, just saying that we had with that, so I don't know.
So, well,
And I don't know, have we talked to the utility that's there about moving those things to provide an access there?
the only thing is that there's a price to it all.
Mhm.
I, as a city, I'm not gonna spend any money to move power lines.
But again, though, the simplest to me is if we allow a trade-off of saying we'll shift it down a little bit, it's not providing a new curb cut necessarily, it's shifting one. And if that's a cost that the homeowner is going to pay, there's no cost to the taxpayer. And
I guess it kind of comes back to, well, we created it when if you don't move your car on snow emergency, you get your car towed. Well, should we just throw the fine away because we created that too?
Mhm.
But we're still enforcing the towing. So I guess we got to look at which way we want to do this.
Well, yeah, here you've got somebody who's coming to us, a citizen of the community who's trying to do their best to follow the rules that we put in place. So to me, I mean, the question I ask myself is what type of city do we want to be? You know, do we want to be somebody who's easy to be worked with? Do we want to say, okay, we can find some things that we can do to make it work for you? And to Joe's point, that's what the variances are for. Or do we want to just say, no, we're not going to be willing to work with people to find solutions to their problems? That's what our job is to find solutions to the problems. So
Not on an individual basis.
No.
We're representing the whole city.
And to that point, Jill, and I would also say to look back through minutes over the last 8 years since I've been on council, the number of variances that have not been opposed it's pretty staggering. We kind of let everything go, so this is,
This is different. Are we ready to make a motion?
I'll make a motion. I'll make a motion that we deny the request at this time. However, we can always look at the odd even parking for next year.
Well, that's another subject, so.
Right. But I'm going to make a motion that we deny it at this time.
Okay, we have a motion from Diane to deny the request. Do I have a second?
I'm going to second.
We got a second by Heidi. Any other discussion? Call the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
I,
Motion carries 5 in favor, or 3 in favor, 2 against.
guess later.
See you. Have a good
Thank
one.
you. Then, reports and presentations, Police Department report.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. All right, activity report for the month of June 2022. Some of the numbers we had, we did 43 door checks, we did 275 traffic stops, we did 102 foot patrols, we had 27 assists for people, 26 medicals we did. We had 12 behavioral health calls. We had 13 alarms, 11 welfare checks, 5 juvenile problems, 32 assists for other agencies. We had 3 canine assists for other agencies. We had 18 citizen contact calls, 27 matter of information calls, And we gave out 17 citations for no driver's license and suspended and revoked license.
Chief, can I ask you something on that? If they have no valid driver's license and they have no valid insurance, we don't just let them drive home after we give them a citation, do we?
No, they
Thank
park
you.
them, yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, I was thinking we should maybe get a chain gang or something and have them come over here and wash windows at City Hall for a couple of weeks or something. Wouldn't that be nice?
We could try that. So we had a total of calls for June of 802. So that was up from May by 48, and then it was down by 88 from 2021. So that's June. And then I did speak to Diane outside. We'll work with her
Okay,
on that issue.
sounds good.
Thank you.
Just one question, golf carts. We're getting a bunch of them running down Main Street and Sinclair Lewis Avenue. Is that
Yeah,
okay
Main
to
Street,
do?
They can't be on Main Street.
Yeah, other than across the bridge.
Right.
Yeah, well, I've seen them on Main Street right in front of the theater and going wherever they feel like it.
Yeah.
ATVs, I think we can't control that,
Well, they have to be off.
or can we?
They can't be on 71 either.
Well, yeah, they're all over the place.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
I'm just asking, maybe we
we can start
crack
looking
down
at
on
it.
that a little
Yeah,
bit.
there's starting to be a lot
'cause-
more of them out there.
Because I almost seen one on the intersection by Holiday there on 12th and Main go through the stoplight as if he was a car, and
Yeah,
he almost wasn't very good.
yeah,
So,
I agree.
okay,
Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you.
Public Works Department, Ben?
Good evening, Mayor and Council. This past month, we did get the 3 radar signs installed and working. We did have a solar panel that was malfunctioning right away, but this has been replaced under warranty and is now working properly. Seal coating for this year is completed. We're going to be spot tar patching now that the majority of the holes were filled earlier this spring. Tree trimming around street signs and stop signs. The beach area was cleaned and drug out. Some sand was brought in and leveled. We added some rock to the boat landing when there was a big drop off after the concrete planks that extend into the lake. We are working with the DNR to assist with placing more concrete pads to extend the boat ramp to prevent material from being blown out by boats power loading onto their trailer. That's what caused that issue in the first place. So the rock is temporary and we're working on a more permanent solution with the DNR. Splash pad, there has been 2 weekends that we've had to close the splash pad due to the filter pump being unable to run. So the reason for that is if the filter pump doesn't run, then the water is not being treated in the tank and we cannot have the splash pad operational because people are being exposed to untreated water. Both times the cause of this was sticks in the check valve, in the tank, in the ground. The only way those sticks get in there is from people pushing them into the drains, and that's how they end up into the tank. We did add a pre-filter to hopefully prevent these sticks from getting into the tank, but that has been our issues both times that we had to close it this year. There's been a little confusion with that with people, so trying to clear that up. The week prior to Sinclair Lewis Days, we spent a lot of time preparing for the events taking place in town that weekend. We've made a few sprinkler repairs in the parks, watering trees once a week for the EAB grant yet, weed spraying at our city buildings, streets, and the airport. Campground, we assisted with installing a sidewalk to the shelter, finished the asphalt patching by the building, and the black dirt work around the shelter and seating. Airport, we went through all of our fuel that was purchased at the beginning of the year, so we just had another load delivered last week for that. So, any questions I can answer?
Questions? Comments?
Good job.
Okay, thank you. Planning Commission, Sarah?
Good evening, Mayor and Council. In your packet, you have a copy of the Planning Commission agenda. Our meeting was held yesterday afternoon, and we did have one public hearing for a variance, which is an action item later on your agenda. For the building permit report for June, we issued 40 permits for a total construction value of $826,000. A year ago, we did 10 permits for just over $1 million. Is there any questions about the permits?
Oh, Any other questions?
Thank you.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. City engineer update, Keith?
Good evening, Mayor and Council. South Industrial Park project is going well. Kind of working on the big storm sewer out there and some water main. Got probably at least 2 to 3 weeks left of pipe work out there. And then there's about 2 weeks worth of dirt work. The crew actually hasn't been there for a couple weeks now. Hopefully they'll arrive soon. We haven't been able to get a date of when they're going to come back to finish that work, but hopefully it'll be soon. So I would suggest that street work will probably start about middle of August, maybe a little bit past the middle of August when street work will start out there. So that's where that project's at. They still have to do the turn lane off of County Road or Highway 28, so that'll be forthcoming here soon. On the 2022 project, the phase 1 is all paved. You probably have noticed that. First lift is down. The driveways and sidewalks, that concrete work will actually start tomorrow, so that'll get going. That'll take a week and a half, 2 weeks. Residents have all been notified about that, and not be on them for 7 days, those kinds of things. And then after that would start restoration in that area. On the phase 2 portion, the pipe crew will be back next week, and it's probably about 2 more weeks worth of work there, and then they'll start the street work on that portion. So, by mid to later half of August, that'll probably be, probably by the end of August, that'll be done with street work, I would say. The phase 2 portion, or 3, portion, which is the restoration portion, rehabilitation portion up on the north end, that'll be started late August, early September is when that is still scheduled to be done. So all in all, we're probably looking at mid-September, maybe into the latter half of September. We should be pretty well done with that project. So the Meyer parcel development project, we're still just kind of in the beginning stages, starting the preliminary plating and those things. And you'll see that come before first Plan Commission and then to you ultimately in fairly short order. So. Any questions for me?
Questions? Okay, thank you, Keith.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Now to the people that have been waiting patiently. Center Care Health Project update.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. We are here, I'm Patty Roth, I'm the Senior Director of Acute Care, and this is Ann Major, she's the Administrator for the nursing home. So we're here just more for informational update about our project, the build of the nursing home, and the progress that we've made. So in your package, you'll see the parking phased plan, kind of like where we started, and right now we are on the 3rd phase. So we started with about 90 parking spots, went down to about 48 during the 2nd phase, and then now we have opened up to right around 90 again. By the time we're done, we're gonna have 130 parking spots, which will be much better for our entire patient population. There has been some, community members that have been, concerned about the parking, and we acknowledge that. One thing that they did, when we talked to the neighbor, he's concerned on Oak Street about the parking on both sides of the street. I agree with him. It is very congested on that street, specifically with the construction parking and that kind of thing. I know one of his suggestions was to have parking just on one side of the street, and I would support that wholeheartedly myself. If we could have it on the resident side of the street, so, if residents have visitors, they don't have to walk across the street, and it would block traffic coming out of the parking lot from the hospital, that would probably be the best, but that's, obviously something that could be decided by you. Any questions about parking?
I know parking on one side of the street, we've got that in front of the high school right now. It's marked residential only.
Mm-hmm.
So that is possible. It's an option, I would think, so.
Okay, yeah.
But there was talk about maybe putting some shrubbery or something to keep headlights from shining from the parking lot into people's houses. Is that on the plan?
Not right now, because the shrubbery would have to be on his property. So,
Okay.
We don't have any space to put shrubbery. If the parking lot is like right up to the boulevard.
Okay.
So, and according to the regulations, it has to be, the branches have to be 8 feet or higher, so it's not gonna
Okay.
protect him at all from any lights.
Okay, because that was one of the concerns we had with people sitting in their houses,
Yep,
car lights
yep.
going in their windows.
And I know that, the Central Care team, we kind of want to just get the project done and then kind of assess, okay, so what is the actual impact? Because I think there's a lot of fear about what the impact's going to be, and let's see, and then let's talk to the neighbors and see what we can do.
Anyone else have any other questions?
And then the second thing was we just wanted to bring forward, so we are currently on our phase 1 of the building project, which is that new section, that section going out. Probably by the end of September, we're hoping, we are going to be opening up that new section.
Okay.
And we're gonna be closing down the middle section, and then there's gonna be residents closest to the lake also. So when that section in the middle is closed, fire is not gonna have access to walk through to go, so if there were a fire call, we just wanna make sure that the city's aware that there's gonna be 2 separate entrances into long-term care, and that, movement will be restricted.
Okay. All right. Well, I'm sure Vicky will pass that on to,
We'll be in touch with when that does occur.
right, yeah.
Right.
So, okay,
That's it.
sounds good. Any questions last minute? Okay,
All right,
thank you.
Thanks.
Airport Board report?
Okay, the airport board met in regular session on Wednesday, July 13th. They had a few items of discussion. They had the final punch list and closeout report for the runway maintenance project. We do have some issues with the compass rose. Did you know how they seal coated over and then they had to remove it? And so our city engineer, our consultant for the airport is actually working on that and closely with Ben on what the resolution to that is going to be. We also discussed the land acquisition grant timeline. That's actually a 2023 grant. And so we have till about April of 2023 to get that agreement and everything finalized, and they're working on that part right now. The hangar door grant final report has been submitted. We're just still waiting for reimbursement. It's been submitted to MnDOT, and we're waiting for that money to come in. As well as the fueling grant. We're just waiting for the final signatures. I did push out to MnDOT again and said I'm waiting for that grant to come back with the signature on it because we have a contractor lined up and we can't incur costs before I get the sign back. The AD building grant, we are modifying the scope of that project, and that is in your packet tonight for an action item. Just had some other miscellaneous submittals. The Carissa grant and the 2022 M&O, and I report this, I've submitted them, we're just waiting for the money to come back. MnDOT is seeming to have about a 6-month lag on returning those funds back to the city. And then they're beginning their discussions on some potential future uses of the bipartisan infrastructure grant project, where airports were awarded additional money over a period of 5 years. So we have some time there. We're just kind of looking out to the future to see what some of those uses might be. I do have one action item for you tonight, and that is on the AD building.
Okay, questions, comment? We'll move on to Finance Committee.
So the Finance Committee met on Tuesday, July 12th to review the results of the recent sidewalk inspection and provide direction to staff on that. They were completed by a contractor, and we actually had a total cost of $101,906, which would have been if we fixed all of the sidewalks in this last phase. The city share for city sidewalks is about $21,000. The balance we would, of course, pay and then bill to the owners unless the owner decided to do the work themselves. Due to the size of the project, the committee recommended to reduce the scope of the project by removing the outlying areas and kind of repairing the main corridor items in 2022. There are some of those on Highway 71, but because we're out several years yet before that would be fixed, and these are trip hazards that we really can't ignore those. So we will be starting working on those main corridor and getting those notices out. And we're also going to be notifying everybody that's in phase 2 for next year, so they're kind of aware that that's upcoming. So that's kind of the direction that was given. We can split the project in 2 and kind of bring it down a little bit and get the more serious main ones done first, and then the outlying ones in year 2. So there's no action on that. Just kind of update you.
Typically, this whole sidewalk project thing would happen at a staff level, but because of the size and scope of it, we did want to bring the finance committee in on that, so. Any questions?
Comments, questions? Okay, then we will jump down to 7D, approve advertisement for EMT positions,
I'm getting there.
Me too.
page 58.
So Kathy Strufert, ambulance director, she's requested the city authorize an advertisement for individuals interested in becoming EMTs. There is a class coming up, and it's going to be hosted by our department, so it'll be right here in Sauk Center. We hope that'll garner some additional interest. It'll also save us money for anybody that is paying mileage to any EMT candidates, et cetera. So what we're doing is just to approve the advertisement for applicants interested in attending this course.
Okay, do I have a motion to approve the advertisement?
Motion to approve.
Motion by Diane, do I have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Joe. Call the question, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 4 in favor, none against. 7E, approve pay request number 4, 2021 Aerosmith project.
This is at the Interpretive Center. Pay request number 4 has been received from Mark Lee Excavating for the 2021 Aerosmith project. The amount due this request is $59,275.29. We're nearing being done. We do have some retainage that'll be left yet once everything is complete. Lien waivers are in and the IC-134s are filed, because we won't actually pay that final retainage until we have all the documentation that we need. So pay request 4 to Mark Lee Excavating.
Questions, comments? Do I have a motion to approve the pay request number 4?
I'll make the motion.
Motion by Heidi, do I have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Diane. Call the question, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 4 in favor, none against. 7F, approve pay request number 3, 2022 Second Street project.
So this is for CNL Excavating, the Second Street project. As you know, the original contract was revised down to $4.674 million. We've completed to date $1.885. So that's almost half of what has been completed as far as what is due to CNL Excavating. The amount due of this request is $684,231.24.
Questions or comments about that? Otherwise, do I have a motion to approve pay request number 3?
Motion to approve.
I'll second.
Motion by Joe, second by Diane. Call the question, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 4 in favor, none against. 7G, approve resolution 2022-64 granting variance.
So the resolution was actually provided you tonight ahead of the meeting because the planning commission meeting was just last night. So the planning commission, acting as the Board of Adjustments, conducted a public hearing on Tuesday, July 19th at 4:30 p.m. to consider a variance request. The variance request was for property owned by Keith and Christine Steichen at 1329 Lakeview Drive. The request was to allow a detached accessory structure at 15 feet from the corner side setback when 25 feet is required. You can see on the picture that I did provide, the red arrow shows 15 feet back from the right-of-way. The right-of-way boulevard area is about 15 feet as well, so it would be about 30 feet behind the curb. This will allow the construction of a 30 by 36 garage, 15 feet from the right-of-way. The Planning Commission forwarded a recommendation after their meeting, and their recommendation is to grant the request. They did have 5 findings that they did present to support that request, and they had 2 conditions. Conditions about reducing erosion and stormwater by installing gutters and downspouts directed away from the neighboring properties, and that lighting had to be downward directed. So that is the request, and the recommendation of the Planning Commission is to approve the request for the variance to Keith and Christine Steichen.
Questions, comments? It's not in the way of line of sight for the corner.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
There is a utility easement running between the property in the back and their property, but they are far enough off of that. And the wall to the right, one of the things, the reason why we the planning commission was, it lines up perfectly with the west wall of their existing garage. It doesn't tuck behind. So for neighborhood aesthetics, it lines up and keeps things square. So that's part of the reasoning on the motion to grant the variance.
I guess one question, because it's not in here, we normally have an opportunity to look at it, but what was the difficulty presented? Why it couldn't meet the setback?
His utility lines from the main service run up to the back of his house, and if we make him stay there, he'd actually have to either move his utility lines and pull down his fence,
Okay,
privacy fence, and/or build the garage over the top of the utility lines the service lines going to his house.
No.
So that's basically the hardship we were looking at on that.
Okay.
So,
And that's actually the finding number 2.
okay.
right. So, any other questions or comments? Otherwise, I'll look for a motion to approve Resolution 2022-64.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Motion by Diane. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Joe. Call the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 4 in favor. Motion passes. 7H, approve Resolution 2022-66, authorizing quotes for AD building.
So at the airport board meeting on July 13th, the board discussed potential improvements to the AD building at the airport. Items for improvement include a new roof, new windows, and new siding for the existing building. A preliminary estimate for the AD building improvements came in at $22,500, or preliminary quote. And at that time, the board also discussed needed improvements for the courtesy car garage. The board directed staff to draft a plan to connect the garage stall for the courtesy car to the AD building, and you do have that copy of it attached that I gave you in the plan, or in the packet. The source of funds for the project would be $32,000 airport ARPA grant funds that we have, and then with the airport operating funds would pay for the balance. So this would not be something that would be paid through general taxes or levy. If the city were to build the new building with FAA funding, which we do our FAA grants where they pay 90% and that type of a grant, the requirements that they have for an AD building for a community about our size ends up to be about $1.5 million. And the airport board thought that was serious overkill for an airport our size. And so they are recommending and opting to move forward with just renovation of our existing building. So what we're looking to do tonight is simply to approve these plans and authorize the solicitation of quotes for the building addition and repairs.
Questions?
I got one. What does AD stand for?
Arrival and departure.
Arrival and departure. Thank
I'm
you.
sorry.
Thank you. No, I didn't know. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Do I have a motion to approve Resolution 2022-66?
Motion to approve.
I'll
Motion by
second.
Diane, second by Heidi. Call the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 4 in favor, none against. We have no unfinished business, no new business. We are then to the consent agenda. We have schedule of claims, unpaid claims, $955,451.27. Paid claims of $5,655 for a total of $961,106.27. We have June checks of paid claims / payroll of $1,284,930.57. We have a request from Scott Kowski representing the American Legion Post 67, has submitted a application and permit for a one-day temporary on-sale liquor license for the beer garden for the CentraCare's Employee and Family Day in Sinclair Lewis Park on August 18th, 2022, and the fee and the certificate of insurance are being provided. Is there any questions concerning the consent agenda? Do I have a motion to approve the consent calendar as presented?
Motion to approve.
Motion by Heidi,
Second.
second by Diane. Call the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 4 in favor, none against. 11, informational items.
Normally, I have the demographer estimate for this second meeting in August, but I don't.
Oh,
So,
okay.
next meeting.
All right. Sounds good. That brings us to the end of our agenda. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Motion by Joe. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Diane. Call the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 4 in favor, none against. Meeting adjourned.